First, really, I want to make sure you're in the right room, the right place. This is, well, let me start. My name is Michael Robak, as the title up there says. I'm currently the Associate Director of the Law Library at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. I'm also the Director of IT at the law school, which is kind of a weird bifurcation. Typically, the director is both directors. But all this really means is that I report to everybody. I'm in charge of nothing. So in that vein. So this is, as the title says, our ideas made visible, tools for visualizing data. But it is a very elementary kind of thing, okay? So I look at the tech guys in the front here, that Jason and Tom, that I know to be more savvy than I am, so hopefully this won't disappoint. It's meant to be sort of some simple things that can actually make you look like you know a lot, because this is how I've gotten through in life. And then hopefully a couple of examples that seem kind of interesting or useful to you. And before we get started, just so I get a sense of the room, how many librarians are in here? Okay. How many IT folks? Okay. So that's actually kind of a nice mix. And I know everybody's kind of actually blended. We're all purple squirrels, right? Which is a great keynote, a very great keynote. So anyway, the title here, oh, sorry. You guys probably saw this talk last year, Law Libraries Are Doomed. I just love this idea that we're all doomed. And so when I did this speech the first time, I actually kind of threw this in as, oh, sorry, wrong talk, which it is. Visualization is becoming a very hot thing, right? So many of you probably saw the ABA journal from last month on Vision Quest, in which they talked about a number of the legal research services that are being developed that really focus on visualization. My talk is not going to be about that, but this is just simply to demonstrate that visualization is becoming more and more important to folks. Now, I personally tend to be a visual person. I find it hard to be in a meeting where I don't have a whiteboard in the room, which I need to jump up and make pictures or whatever. I'm told that's a very tech thing to have happen. For me, it's really about getting people on the same page. I think literally it's easier to have a conversation if you have an agreement about the mental construct, right? About the map, which is what visualization actually leads to. I mean, there's a lot of interplay between the idea of visualization, design, map making, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to touch on some of those points, I think, or at least I hope, throughout this. Has anybody worked with or used Ravel or Ravel? Yeah, Ravel. Generally, what do you think? Does it make sense? There's a shocked look, sorry. I hope the camera's picking that up.
No, it does. I actually had to, I worked with Daniel a little bit last year, proposal was on the vendor liaison at my school, and it offers added service in that it's the visual aspect.
Right.
Subjectly, not really being abstract, but the visual tools, they're pretty interesting.
No, it looks interesting, and I've always been intrigued by the Fastcase visualization tool. I think they're still working on it and perfecting it. I think it's interesting, but actually the truth is West has a fairly decent graphic analysis of cases in terms of it's when you're teaching legal research, right? It's easier to explain sort of pictorially what's happening to a case when it goes from trial to the appellate level, and I think their tool is actually not too bad in that regard. But I digress. So why data visualization? There's a great TED Talk by David McCandless. I don't know if people have seen it, but if you haven't, you're about to see it. One of the things I like to do actually is to use other people's material as much as I can. So I'm going to pop over there. But basically what he's saying is that by visualizing information, we turn into a landscape that you can explore with your eyes, a sort of information map. And when you're lost in information, a map can be a very useful thing. So I'm going to see if this will work, I hope. Yeah. Oops. They told me they had a good connection in here. Okay, well, that is really too bad. I guess it'll keep winding. Let's see if it pops back in. His stuff, if you haven't seen it, is really amazing. It's just not going to play for me. Darn. Okay. So, wait. Really? The tech gods are conspiring against me. I'm sorry? Anybody have any advice for me here? Oh, and that one?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a huge tech trick to do in the middle of a talk, isn't it?
We'll keep talking.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. And actually, I'll kill it so it doesn't accidentally try and work. Okay. Okay, so Edward Tufte. Everybody knows Edward Tufte, right? Or should know Edward Tufte if you don't. And so the great thing about these new cool tools that are out there to help us with visualization, you still need to understand basic principles of visualization. And if you don't know Edward Tufte, you need to know who he is. His site Why is that not working? Nothing's working for me. Okay, so that's a link to his website, which you all can go to. Seriously? And actually, I did run through this before you guys got here.
It's all of our laptops sucking up bandwidth.
Twitter, Facebook.
Yeah.
Michael, I've got it up on this.
Oh, okay.
Please work.
Please work, yes. Ah, yeah. Now, is the TED Talk on there too?
What's the? I need to search for that.
Oh, sorry. It's Ted McCandless. Yep, that's it. This is about 18 minutes. I'm just going to show the first couple of minutes of it because he's got some really great things.
It feels like we're all suffering from information overload or data glut. And the good news is there might be an easy solution to that, and that's using our eyes more. So visualizing information so that we can see the patterns and connections that matter, and then designing that information so it makes more sense, or it tells a story, or allows us to focus only on the information that's important. Failing that, visualized information can just look really cool. So let's see. This is the $1 billion-ogram, and this image arose out of frustration I had with the reporting of billion-dollar amounts in the press. That is, they're meaningless without context. 500 billion for this pipeline, 20 billion for this war. It doesn't make any sense. So the only way to understand it is visually and relatively. So I scraped a load of reported figures from various news outlets and then scaled the boxes according to those amounts. And the colors here represent the motivation behind the money. So purple is fighting, and red is giving money away, and green is profiteering. And what you can see straight away is you start to have a different relationship to the numbers. You can literally see them. But more importantly, you start to see patterns and connections between numbers that would otherwise be scattered across multiple news reports. Let me point out some that I really like. This is OPEC's revenue, this green box here, 780 billion a year. And this little pixel in the corner, 3 billion, that's their climate change fund. Americans, incredibly generous people, over 300 billion a year donated to charity every year, compared with the amount of foreign aid given by the top 17 industrialized nations at 120 billion. And then, of course, the Iraq war predicted to cost just 60 billion back in 2003, and the mushroomed slightly. Afghanistan and Iraq mushroomed now to 3,000 billion. So, Now, it's great, now we have this texture and we can add numbers to it as well. So we can say, well, a new figure comes out, let's see, African debt. How much of this diagram do you think might be taken up by the debt that Africa owes to the West? Let's take a look. So there it is, 227 billion is what Africa owes. And the recent financial crisis, how much of this diagram might that figure take up? What does that cost the world? Let's take a look at that. Douche. Which I think is the appropriate sound effect from that much money. 11,900 billion. So by visualizing this information, we turned it into a landscape that you can explore with your eyes, a kind of map, really, a sort of information map. And when you're lost in information, an information map is kind of useful. So I want to show you another landscape now. I need to imagine what a landscape of the world's fears might look like. Let's take a look. This is mountains out of molehills, a timeline of global media panic. So I'll label this for you in a second. But the height here, I want to point out, is the intensity of certain fears as reported in the media. Let me point them out. So this, swine flu, pink. Bird flu. SARS, brownish here. Remember that one? The millennium bug. Terrible disaster. These little green peaks are asteroid collisions. And in summer here, killer wasps. So these are what our fears look like over time in the media.
Oh.
But what I love, and I'm a journalist, and what I love is finding hidden patterns. I love being a data detective, and there's a very interesting and odd pattern hidden in this data that you can only see when you visualize it. Let me highlight it for you. See this line? This is a landscape for violent video games. As you can see, there's a kind of odd, regular pattern in the data, twin peaks every year. If we look closer, we see those peaks occur at the same month every year. Why? Well, November, Christmas video games come out, and there may well be an upsurge in concern about their content. But April isn't a particularly massive month for video games. Why April? Well, in April 1999 was the Columbine shooting. And since then, that fear has been remembered by the media and echoes through the group mind. Gradually through the year, you have retrospectives, anniversaries, court cases, even copycat shootings, all pushing that fear into the agenda. And there's another pattern here as well. Can you spot it? See that gap there? There's a gap, and it affects all the other stories. Why is there a gap there? You see where it starts? September 2001, when we had something very real to be scared about. So I've been working as a data journalist for about a year, and I keep hearing a phrase all the time, which is this: data is the new oil. Now, data is a kind of ubiquitous resource that we can shape to provide new innovations and new insights, and it's all around us and it can be mined very easily. And it's not a particularly great metaphor in these times, especially if you live around the Gulf of Mexico, but I would perhaps adapt this metaphor slightly, and I would say that data is the new soil. Because for me, it feels like a fertile, creative medium. You know, over the years, online, we've laid down a huge amount of information and data, and we irrigated it with networks and connectivity, and it's been worked and tilled by unpaid workers and governments. And all right, I'm kind of milking the metaphor a little bit, but it's a really fertile medium. And it feels like visualizations, infographics, data visualizations, they feel like flowers blooming from this medium. But if you look at it directly, it's just a load of numbers and disconnected facts. But if you start working with it and playing with it in a certain way, interesting things can appear and different patterns can be revealed. Let me show you this. Can you guess what this data set is? What rises twice a year, once in Easter and then 2 weeks before Christmas, has a mini peak every Monday and then flattens out over the summer? I'll take answers. Chocolate? You might want to get some chocolate in. Any other guesses? Shopping. Yeah, retail therapy might help. Sick leave, yeah, you'll definitely want to take some time off. Shall we see? So, information guru, Lee Byron and myself, we scraped 10,000 status Facebook updates for the phrase break up and broken up, and this was the pattern we found. People clearing out for spring break. Coming out of very bad weekends on a Monday. Being single over the summer. And then the lowest day of the year, of course, Christmas Day. Who would do that? So there's a titanic amount of data out there now, unprecedented. But if you ask the right kind of question or you work it in the right kind of way, interesting things can emerge.
Sorry, this is really terrific. I would actually use it for the rest of my presentation, but it's stealing, so I can't do it. But the point is that, I mean, obviously he's using different kinds of tools that I'm going to be talking about, but it's the whole idea that this is the point of visualization, right? It can do these really cool things. So the Edward Tufte link, sorry, Tom. Oh, this is great. Thank you. There. Tufte is the guy who wrote the visual display of quantitative information, which I don't know if that'll take me to that, or if I can get to that. Actually, it should be under his.
Where am I looking for?
Under his books. Yeah. This one. If you don't have this, and if your library doesn't have it, get a copy. It is the single greatest, I think, text on visualization and the fundamentals associated with visualization that you'll be able to find. There have been people who have imitated him, but he is the guy. And the thing about visualization as well is it's as subject to lying and cheating as statistics are, right? Because at the end of the day, you're representing numbers, but to represent them in a correct and accurate kind of way can also be a game. I'm sure many of you know or have seen instances where charts are shown where the timeline is slightly off, so it looks greater than it should be. So those are the kinds of things he talks about. Let's see. So back to me. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to have to buy Tom a drink or two or three. These are his basic principles of graphical excellence, and I bring them to your attention because for whatever tool you use, no matter how easy, no matter how sophisticated, these are the kinds of things you want to pay attention to. As he says, graphical excellence is the well-designed presentation of interesting data, but it's a matter of substance, of statistics, and of design. So the design element is just as important as anything else. Graphical excellence also consists of taking complex ideas and communicating them with clarity, precision, and efficiency. And hopefully I have at least one example of that. Graphical excellence is also that which gives the viewer the greatest number of ideas in the shortest time with the least ink in the smallest space. And so to sort of illustrate that is his diagram of Napoleon's March, which I hopefully will come up. No. Yes, that's it. Okay, so this, as he points out, is a picture of Napoleon's march on Russia, with Napoleon starting here on to my right, and the sort of tannish part is his army marching toward Moscow. And then the black part is the return from Moscow back. Now, this is in French. It was done by this guy named Menard. But it's showing, I think, 3 or 4 dimensions of information because temperature is also part of this to show how cold it was at various stages of it. But the amazing thing is that you see this tiny little split. Let's see. Is that on? Sorry, nothing's working. There's a tiny little split in the black as he's heading back, and it's right across a river. There was a river that was partially frozen over. Half of his troops fell into the river and drowned on the way back. So this is one of Tufte's examples of the ability to put massive amounts of information into a 2-dimensional space in a very simple kind of way. So again, I commend to you Tufte's materials. So back to me, Tom, thank you. Also, and I won't try to get to this site, but there's a Wired article. Edward Tufte believes deeply that PowerPoint is evil. How many people know about this thing? Yes, right? And he has a very eloquent architecture for it, but the best thing is this wallpaper, which for a while I had, because every time you make a PowerPoint, Edward Tufte kills a kitten, which is a horrible, terrible thing, but that's how much he feels about PowerPoint. So Tufte is one mainstay in this visualization area. How many people are familiar with this book, Information Architects? One, couple? If you don't have it in your library, get it in your library, although it's really hard to get these days. Richard Saul Wurman, who was actually an architect by training, wrote this book, and frankly, it's the thing that really sort of opened my eyes on some level to this idea of visualization and design and what you can do with information. Now, Richard Saul Wurman, as you probably know, is also the guy who started the TED Talks. He was the innovator behind that. He sold it for a lot of money. But one of his other earlier works is this Cities, Comparisons, and Form of Scale. This is one of his earliest works. His notion was that we talked about all these sort of ancient cities like Athens or Rome, but it was without context. So what he did was to not only show each of these geographic locations, but he then made them meaningful by showing how they were the same size, relatively speaking. And then he compared them to, say, New York or Boston today, so that you could get a better understanding of what a population center was. Because we talk about these things as if, well, Rome was the giant population center. When you see the picture of it and what it is in scope and scale relative to, say, a Boston or New York, it's unbelievably small, right? So it's this whole idea of being able to make apples to apples. I mean, that's part of what visualization can do for us. He's also known primarily, cut off, the Access tour guide books. You may be familiar with those. And some of you who took, or any of you who took any kind of business information stuff, this Wall Street Journal Guide to Understanding Money and Business and Markets. But all these things, the thing about it is he relies heavily on visualization and visual tools. I don't know if this is going to work. I shouldn't even probably try it. There's a great interview. How many know who Walter Mossberg is, right? The tech writer for the Wall Street Journal. The guy for whom some things live and die by whether he says it's okay or not. He interviewed Richard Saul Wurman. I commend this to you because it shows you what an interesting guy Wurman is and what a crotchety guy is, but just like ideas every other second that come out of him. Oops. So my first simple tool, the Google Ngram, right? How many people know about the Google Ngram? I guess more importantly, how many people have used the Google Ngram in some fashion? Okay, good, some. So what is the Ngram? It is, it's a phrase usage graphing tool designed by some folks at Google that takes it's now more than 5.2 million books, but takes their corpus of digitized books and then searches for the phrase or phrases or words or word constructs that you put into Ngram. So the classic one that they show is like Frankenstein, and I think, actually, could you bring up browser, Tom? Sorry.
Frankenstein, and Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, Frankenstein and Sherlock Holmes. Or no, I'm sorry, if you bring up Google Ngram, the thing is preloaded with yep. Right. So it actually searches these three terms, Frankenstein, Albert Einstein, Sherlock Holmes, in the materials that it has digitized. And it gives you a sense of when they became popular, when they became available. And it's kind of fun just to throw words into it. If you could go back to me now. So how did I stumble onto the Ngram and a use? Well, so I'm very excited about technology and the law. I think law librarians particularly, or folks who work in a law library, ought to be teaching this kind of stuff. There are other sessions that are talking about that. But because I was struck by it, I was at Illinois. Before I came to Kansas City, I was at the University of Illinois, which has this amazing library, right? They still have lots of books there. And I found in the catalog this book called The Technology of Law. because I'm really struck by this distinction between the law of technology, right, intellectual property, copyright, trademark, whatever, and the technology of law. And it's the technology of law that we should be teaching about. So I went to find this book, The Technology of Law, and the title page looks like this. It says, A Condensus of Maxims, Leading Cases, The Elements of Law, by W.T. Hughes, and it was published in 1893. And I thought, wow, what the heck does that mean? 1893, The Technology of Law. So, and again, I would bring it up, but I'm not even going to mess around with it. Thank you. But what I realized as I was beginning to read it was that in 1893, this is right before John West and the key number system, right? People were struggling with how to figure out how to present the law, how to talk about the law. And then by the law, I mean American law. We were transitioning off of the British structure, even though copies of Durnford and East and other kinds of British reporters were floating around. The whole point was that the corpus of American law was beginning to develop in a way that was changing. And when I started reading his first page, what I realized is that what he was doing was talking about defining the law, definitions. And so what I did is I plugged in the word definitions and the word maxims, which is what his book was all about. And this is the graph I got. Now, this is not just American legal stuff, right? These are all kinds of texts that are in there. But I'm pretty certain, and actually I'm working, this is the paper I'm working, my great scholarship paper that I'm working on, is that something profoundly significant was happening in 1893 in the American legal system that was having us move away. You see the blue line is maxims, which is the way people expressed and talked about the law, and definitions began to come into play. How we talk, how we define the law. And so the other cool thing is that you can actually kind of hover over the different lines, and at each point, each data point reveals itself. So you can see in 1892, maxims, that's when the real decline began. And then it was a significant climb forward. But it was in that time period that John West, other folks were developing new ways to talk about the American legal structure. So the truth is, this is what actually led me to think about this talk. Because this visualization tool, the Google Ngram, is the easiest way for me when I'm talking about my paper to explain this concept of things that were changing. Now, I'm sure there's lots of holes in my theory here, more or less, but I just think it's such a cool picture. So really, that's what my whole talk is about, is this cool picture. But actually, I've run it by some actual legal scholars who say I'm onto something. But that's the way you can use Ngram in a way that's sort of not playing around. I mean, you know, people like to take like sewing and knitting and see where, when sewing began to ascend and knitting, you'll be surprised to know knitting is making a comeback. But again, it's a small data set, relatively speaking, but it has awfully, I think, interesting opportunities, and I would go to Chrome, but I won't. So the next simple tool, which I think you can do some cool things with, is Wordle. And how many people here know Wordle? Most everybody most people use it to create pretty word clouds. So I think I will go to Wordle here. Thank you, Tom. Would you like a chair? I feel really bad. Right. So, you need to scrape some text and put it in there too. Is there a random website? Oh, I know. Bring up Calicon. Can you do that? Yeah. And just grab the text.
Maybe the program.
Or, no, sorry, yeah.
What's that?
Go back to the program.
Your program?
You can just grab all that text straight down. There we go. That's enough. So you grab any kind of text. This is what makes it cool, and then create. And then just drop it in there. And then hopefully Java's on here. Say go. No, of course not. So this magic thing happens and the cloud forms. Yes, sorry. Thank you, though, Tom. So here's what I did with Wordle. Most every law school has a dean's welcome, right? So this is my dean, Dean Ellen Studi, who is who is a true believer in technology, what lawyers should be doing with technology. And just as it's not a plug because it's a kind of a closed conference, but in July, we're having a conference called Law Schools, Technology, and Access to Justice that's been funded by the Kauffman Foundation. And we're bringing to Kansas City about 35 folks who are heavily involved in what's happening with the teaching of technology. And we hope what will come out of that is some ideas about what we can actually do to teach technology. And Dean Suni is the driving force behind this. But anyway, we were talking. And I said, wouldn't it be interesting to know how our competitors within our geographic space express themselves about their law school? So I scraped her Dean's Welcome, and this is the visualization I got from it. And you can see we've got, student is big, opportunities, location, faculty. So then I went, and so we're University of Missouri, Kansas City. This is University of Missouri, Columbia. For those of you who don't know Missouri geography, and I don't blame you, there's no reason to know it, Columbia is about 100 miles to the east of Kansas City. It is, however, the mothership. So within our university system, it's where everybody goes to or resides from. Anyway, the law school there is a sister and a competitor at the same time. But this is their dean's message into Wordle. And it's interesting because it has roughly sort of the same kind of focus in terms of what it's trying to convey to the students who are watching it. This is Drake Law School, which is in Iowa, which again is again, these are our specific competitors. This one's kind of different. The dean quoted John Kennedy and some other things on courage and all that stuff. And then I went to the KU, Kansas, which Kansas University, well, as you know, or you don't know, you have no reason to know, Kansas City is actually in Missouri, right? See, I've only been there 2.5 years, so I'm starting to learn all these wonderful things about, that they're still fighting the Civil War, basically, and other things. But it sits right on the line between Kansas and Missouri. There is a Kansas City, Kansas, and Kansas City, Kansas, of course, was the first to get the Google fiber hoods. So actually, we have Google network. I didn't get it this year. This is just an aside. I used it as a leveraging device to get a better deal with AT&T, because I'm waiting to see what shakes out with Google. But anyway, we have Google all over the place. But KU, Kansas, is in Lawrence, Kansas, which is just about 40 minutes to the west of Missouri, or Kansas City, Missouri. And of course, it makes them a real competitor for us. So this is their dean's message. And you can see it's all about them, KU, right? It's very prominent in terms of how they talk about it. Students are much more minimized kind of thing. And then I went to Washburn, which is in Topeka, Kansas, which is again another of our competitors, and did theirs. And again, it's all about them too. So it's interesting. I'm seeing a pattern in Kansas law schools. It's all about them, right? Washburn is big. KU is big. Students are still in here in this way. These are gross generalizations I'm making, by the way. I forgot I'm being taped. Friends in Kansas, I'm sorry. Then I went to University of Tulsa, which actually is a sort of we're competing for the same set of students, more or less, for that school. And their dean was sort of more along the lines of the Missouri schools, focus on excellence law, students is there. But I thought it was my dean actually thought it was an interesting exercise. But again, you can use Wordle for sort of more than just kind of, oh, there we go, came up, thank you. So this is the CaliCon text that Tom just scraped, the program, which is really interesting. The beginner pops up.
It's the track titles, right?
Oh,
That show over and over.
that's what it is. Oh, got it. Everybody's a beginner. But I love the fact technologist popped up so big. Yeah. But anyway, Wordle I think is again simple tool. And most people probably, as I say, have used it, but I think it has opportunities to be used and leveraged in a much greater way. Thank you. Okay, so local tools, and by local I mean things that you might actually have on your desktop. So most of you probably know about Excel's Heat sheet, I guess is the way to describe it. So they allow for color to be used as a visualization tool within Excel. So you can take a series of numbers and have color associated with high range, low range, so you can fairly quickly see what kinds of activities going on within the spreadsheet. There are many GSI, or GIS, or Geographical Information Systems out there. I think GIS is also another visualization tool that's a great and simple device. And many universities actually offer some form of it this video. Well, there's a nice video. It gives a quick demo of it. But the opportunity for those of you in a university setting, you may have access to it. So if you haven't checked your business school, because typically they're associated as a business school resource, but if you haven't checked your card catalog, sorry, so old I am. If you haven't checked your list of resources, you may find that you have a mapping software available to you. And of course, Google Maps is a really cool tool. Tom, I'm sorry, can you go to Google Maps? It used to be actually harder to do the fusion tables, to set up sites.
Like get the new Google.
Oh, you know what? Sorry. Let me sign in. Yeah. I think it's my places. So this was a quick map. So I sit on or I'm one of the members of the Economic Value of Law Libraries Special Committee that's been set up. We're doing the process of, we hired HBR to do a study. But Barbara Bittleth and I are the academic people. And so we wanted to find a subset of academic schools to use as part of the survey that we were using. And so I wanted to sort of graphically represent where the schools were coming from. So with Google Maps, it was very easy just to throw in, as you can see on the other side, the addresses of the locations, and it automatically maps to where they are on the Google Maps. There's still a more sophisticated tool here that you can use called the fusion tables, I think. This is a simpler version of it. So for example, for my 25th college reunion, I got a spreadsheet from our university, my college, because I graduated from a very small college when I had about 180 graduates, and was able to use this to map out where everybody was in the United States. So if I go back to, back to me as laptop? Okay, thanks. So what I wanted to do really was take the map that Julie Jones had created several years ago, showing all the ABA accredited schools. It's still out there, although it may be a little bit out of date now. I think there's been a couple that have been accredited. And then be able to compare and contrast and to show that we were taking what I thought was a fairly representative sample of law schools relative to the law schools throughout the United States. So again, a simple tool that I think very quickly, and it was quick to build the top map, that I was able to demonstrate a number of, very quickly, that we were, I think, on track with what we were trying to do in terms of our recommendations for the surveys. The same thing happened with the county and local government folks, and then with the private law librarians too. I don't know that they used any kind of mapping device, but it actually helped us kind of think through who we wanted to approach about taking part in the survey to be able to show sort of that we were not just, there's another dimension here that I didn't quite map out. This is just purely geographic, but also size, public-private. So there are other tools I could have used to sort of demonstrate that as well. Some free or low cost, and this is where my whole presentation sort of falls apart because I was going to go to but because I have Tom, we're now like a dinner and drinks and Tableau Public. Has anybody used this? It's a relatively simple and straightforward visualization tool. Yes? Hopefully not. Or it's just slow. Because they have a really nice little video. So as you can tell, so much of my presentation was based on other people telling you about things. Yeah. Hey.
What can you do with Tableau Public? You can take data, abstract, hard to understand, dull data, and bring it to life for people. Visualize it so they can understand it better. Make it interactive so they can explore it and use it. Put it up on the web so the world can see it in your blog or on your website. The Wall Street Journal has used Tableau Public to enrich their stories. UNESCO uses it to show the linkage between poverty and education. Bloggers are using it to start discussions with data all across the web. Let's take a look at how Tableau Public goes to work for you. We'll start with a spreadsheet full of data. This one's about housing trends across the nation. With Tableau Public, open it, and Tableau starts you off by discovering the way the data is organized. Pick a couple of starting points, and Tableau can immediately suggest creative visualizations. In a few seconds, we've gone from data to a meaningful visualization of housing availability across different regions. And this is not just a pretty picture. The graphics are live. They provide immediate access to the underlying data. Now let's use the same data and make a different kind of visualization, this time taking a more do-it-yourself approach. Pick an aspect of the data and drop it onto Tableau's freeform canvas. Immediately see the results and keep building from there. It's easy to experiment with different ways of categorizing and displaying the data. The graphics remain live, keeping that data underneath immediately accessible. Then on the next level, you can combine two or more of these visualizations in a dashboard. And Tableau can create controls that allow viewers to filter the data. Without requiring you to write code or hire a developer, this dashboard is a fully functioning application, ready to save to the web, where the Tableau Public servers make it available over the internet. Tableau gives you ready-to-use links to embed your visualization within your web page so the world can see it. Since the graphics remain live, visitors to your blog can quickly narrow their focus on their own region and drill into the specific details that interest them. What's more, visitors can make further use of both the graphics and the data by exporting them. And visitors can share your visualization to the pages of their blogs, where even more people will see it. These shared versions stay live. They always load from the Tableau Public servers. So when you make changes, everything on all the web pages stays up to date. Now, Tableau Public is available for you to use. You can get started by clicking Download.
So, like they said, this is one that you don't have to know a lot of coding for. And these tools range all over the place. So Visualize Free is another one. Sorry. Tom and I are working out a system. Visualize Free. Sorry. Oh, I thought this one had a video too. I only go to things that have videos because it's so much easier. But I don't remember where it is now. Sorry. Anyway, Visualize Free is another good one. Many Eyes, and I think people in the room may be familiar with it. It was originally an IBM product. This one we should go to too. Sorry. Yeah, they have, well, it's actually a combination, sort of a public-private thing. So it's like a lot of things, you can post your information to it, or you steal, not borrow, use others. Yeah, that's the right one. Yeah, thank you. So another one I commend to you. Now, Infographics is another sort of related, I think, area. This is a good one. Easily, sorry. It's EASEL. Has anybody used Easily? Yep. Watch video. Now, there's no small irony that they're using Prezi to show easily, but thank you. But it's another really cool tool. And then under what I call category miscellaneous, Wolframalpha. Everybody knows about Wolframalpha. I actually think it's fun, but I haven't been able to use it for anything really demonstrative. Has anybody used it in a way that they will? I mean, because it's like how many law schools and you get a weird random thing. Actually, sorry, could you bring up Wolframalpha? Oh, thanks. Yeah, so put it like it says, it's really about calculation of stuff, but if you put in a number of law schools in the United States. No, I guess it's sort of almost right. 2008. Yeah, it has some, it's got some things. I commend you to play with it. I'm not sure what, I mean.
It does have examples under the search bar.
I'm sorry?
Under the search bar, it has examples and random, if you're just curious.
Oh. Yeah. Random? Yeah.
Because that means a lot.
Random searches.
Yeah. Oh, there. Now it said something interesting. So behind it's got all these calculations going on. Yeah, present value versus, yeah. So it's obviously it's more mathematical, or more for mathematical kinds of things. The cool thing about it, or the interesting thing is, this was started in Champaign, Illinois. So it's right off the University of Illinois campus. So I used to see the headquarters when I lived there. Another TED Talk that I recommend. How many have seen Hans Rosling's The Best Stats You've Ever Seen? Oh, yes, it is so good. I mean, McCandless was good, but this guy is really great. And again, I was going to go to the video, but if you can find it, yeah, because he's like kind of a godfather to. I would call him a godfather, David McCandless, not in a literal sense, but in kind of the stuff he was doing. Yep. And just again, a couple minutes of it to give you a sense of it. The good thing is I have all these links in my slides.
About 10 years ago, I took on the task to teach global development to Swedish undergraduate students. That was after having spent about 20 years together with African institutions studying hunger in Africa. So I was sort of expected to know a little about the world. And I started in our medical university, Karolinska Institute, an undergraduate course called Global Health. But when you get that opportunity, you get a little nervous. I thought these students coming to us actually have the highest grade you can get in Swedish college system. So I thought maybe they know everything I'm going to teach them about. So I did a pre-test when they came. And one of the questions from which I learned a lot was this one. Which country has the highest child mortality of these 5 pairs? And I put them together so that in each pair of country, one has twice the child mortality of the other. And this means that it's much bigger the difference than the uncertainty of the data. I won't put you at a test here, but it's Turkey, which is highest there, Poland, Russia, Pakistan, and South Africa. And these were the results of the Swedish students. I did it so I got a confidence interval, which was pretty narrow, and I got happy, of course. I had 1.8 right answer out of 5 possible. That means that there was a place for a professor of international health and for my course. But one late night, when I was compiling the report, I really realized my discovery. I have shown that Swedish top students know statistically significantly less about the world than the chimpanzees. Because the chimpanzee would score half right. If I gave them 2 bananas with Sri Lanka and Turkey, they would be right half of the cases. But the students are not there. The problem for me was not ignorance, it was preconceived ideas. I did also an unethical study of the professors of the Karolinska Institute that hands out the Nobel Prize in medicine, and they are on par with the chimpanzee there. So this is where I realized that there was really a need to communicate, because the data of what's happening in the world and the child health of every country is very well aware. So we did this software which displays it like this. Every bubble here is a country. This country over here is China. This is India. The size of the bubble is the population. And on this axis here, I put fertility rate. Because my students, what they said when they looked upon the world, and I asked them, what do you really think about the world? Huh? Well, I first discovered that the textbook was Tintin mainly. And they said the world is still we and them. And we is Western world, and them is third world. And what do you mean with Western world? I said, well, that's long life in small family, and third world is short life in large family. So this is what I could display here. I put fertility rate here, number of children per woman, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to about 8 children per woman. We have very good data since 1962, 1960 about, on the size of families in all countries. The error margin is narrow. Here I put life expectancy at birth, from 30 years in some countries up to about 70 years. And 1962, there was really a group of countries here that was industrialized countries, and they had small families and long lives. And these were the developing countries. They had large families and they had relatively short lives. Now, what has happened since 1962? We want to see the change. Are the students right? It's still 2 types of countries? Or have these developing countries got smaller families and they live here? Or have they got longer lives and live up there? Let's see. We start the world. And this is all UN statistic that has been available. Here we go. Can you see there? It's China. They're moving against better health. They're improving there. All the green Latin American countries, they are moving towards smaller families. Your yellow ones here are the Arabic countries, and they get larger families, but longer lives, but not larger families. The Africans are the green down here. They still remain here. This is India. Indonesia is moving on pretty fast. And in the 80s here, you have Bangladesh still among the African countries there. But now Bangladesh, it's a miracle that happens in the 80s. The imams start to promote family planning, and they move up into that corner. And in 90s, we have the terrible HIV epidemic that takes down the life expectancy of the African countries, and all the rest of the world moves up into the corner where we have long lives and small family, and we have a completely new world.
Yeah, and this software actually you can download and play around with. It's a kind of, you kind of have to know what you're doing with it, but anyway, I again commend that video. Another one is called Gapminder. We won't go to that. What I also have is what I found was a very nice list of resources by skill level, which if I could show you, but when you get to the link, you can see it. But what it does very nicely, quickly, and easily is kind of describe you as not a beginner, kind of a pro. You know, I know HTML5. And then I know actual programming, and then matches up the tools to your skill level. So I think that's a helpful list. This is also another nice list of resources, which will, don't worry, Tom, it's all right. I commend to you, but again, it ranges from very simple to more sophisticated. And then finally, or almost finally, Futureful. Has anybody played around with this? It's actually not, it's an app. Yeah, it's either on your iPhone or your iPad. And you have no control over it exactly, but it's a search engine. And what happens is these bubbles pop up, and they come up with different topics. And then you can like push the bubbles together to come up with a different kind of idea, and then a website is brought up related to the bubbles. It's just kind of a fun thing to do in an airport when you're waiting for a plane. I don't know. It's a new kind of search engine that is a visual search engine, visualization. But it's still got some work to do. So I say thank you. I apologize. A round of applause for Tom, please. Great. Thank you all very much. Yeah, well.